Inspiring Philosophy recently put out another response to my video, Jesus Foretold Muhammad. This time, instead of surrounding himself with useless, cackling cohorts, he decided to go all guns blazing by bringing along a Greek expert. As you're about to see, Inspiring Philosophy's latest response is even more calamitous than the first. Let's proceed. Before getting into the refutation, I'd like to do a quick recap to remind everyone of our core argument. I previously did a video about the famous Paraclete prophecy in John's Gospel. In this prophecy, Jesus speaks of the Paraclete, the Greek Parakletos, who would come after him. I pointed out that the common English translations of advocate, comforter, and helper are problematic, citing Christian and secular academics such as Raymond Brown, Glenn Nielsen, and Gary Burge, who have all been troubled by such interpretations in an issue that academia has dubbed the Paraclete problem. To solve the Paraclete problem, I suggested that rather than interpreting Parakletos as a function, as Bibles commonly do, we should instead interpret it as an epithet or name. I then presented evidence from a range of ancient sources demonstrating that Parakletos can literally be understood with the comparative meaning praised in excess over, which is a precise match to the meaning of the Arabic name Ahmad. The argument starts from the premise that the Greek Parakletos is a compound word made up of the prefix para and the adjective kletos. I presented evidence from linguists and scripture showing that the prefix para carried the quantitative meaning of excess at least as far back as Hellenistic times. I also presented evidence demonstrating that kletos carries the meaning of praised or glorified by virtue of its interchangeability with the word kletos. These meanings were further supplemented by ancient lexicons, manuscripts of Homer's Iliad, and New Testament scribes, which defined and utilised kletos in a similar fashion. Putting all this together, I showed that an alternative interpretation of Parakletos is praised in excess over, which combines the core meaning, praised, with the comparative meaning of excess. This proposal offers a coherent and linguistically grounded solution to the Paraclete problem faced by scholars. We argued that this was the original intention of John's Gospel, with its author coining a new epithet or name, Parakletos, correctly understood as praised in excess over, capturing with precision the exact meaning of the Arabic name Ahmad, which means more praised.
Bonus research.
With my recap out of the way, I'll now briefly present some additional research and discoveries that have been made since I published my earlier videos, further bolstering my claim that the Parakletos prophesied by Jesus should be interpreted as an epithet or name, meaning praised in excess over others. Our understanding of praised for kletos is further corroborated in the lexicon attributed to the 5th century church father, Cyrillus of Alexandria, which defines kletos using the Greek words doxa and endoxos, which carry the meaning of praise or glory, and praised or glorious, respectively. Our understanding of the meaning excess for the prefix para is further corroborated by the Abbott Smith Manual Greek Lexicon of the New Testament, which cites the example of the New Testament compound parorgizo, where para carries the meaning above measure. Now, you may be wondering, are there good reasons to interpret Parakletos in John's Gospel as a name? Yes, there are. Historically speaking, kletos was commonly used both as a Greek name and also as an element in compound Greek names, around the time John's Gospel was written. For example, the following coins were issued during the reigns of the Roman emperors Marcus Aurelius and Marcus Julius Philippus in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, respectively. Here are the inscriptions on the reverse side of the coins, along with the translations. Note that both coins mention kletou, an inflected form of kletos, in the context of a name. Also note that these coins are associated with Mastora, which was a city in Asia Minor. Now it just so happens that John's Gospel was written in Ephesus, which is also a city in Asia Minor. This is according to an early tradition by the church father Irenaeus. These 2nd and 3rd century coins are significant because they indicate that Kletos was utilised as a personal name in the same geographic region of Asia Minor and around the same time that John's Gospel was authored. Finally, what is striking with the Paraclete prophecy in John's Gospel is that the author, in his choice of using Parakletos when translating the original message of Jesus into Greek, did not merely convey the skeletal meaning of praise. He encoded both the quality of being praised and the comparative degree of being praised more than others, which is a core element in the meaning of the name Ahmed and distinguishes it from other similar names like Muhammad and Mahmud. This precision in translation would not be captured by an alternative choice, such as kletos, meaning praised, polykletos, meaning much praised, or telekletos, meaning far praised. With my recap and additional research and discoveries out of the way, let's now proceed with the refutation of Inspiring Philosophy's response video.
Inspiring Philosophy Refutation Calamity.
This particular textual variation is so obscure. I couldn't even find it in some of my critical texts. It's not even listed.
This is a reach.
Here, Inspiring Philosophy's Greek expert mocked my example of a scribal annotation. He referred to my example as a textual variation and said it is so obscure that he couldn't even find it in his critical editions of the New Testament. He seems to be ignorant of the fact that this is not a textual variation, but rather a scribal note praising John. So of course it won't be mentioned in critical editions of the New Testament. Critical editions are designed to help reconstruct the earliest attainable text of the New Testament, not to document random scribal comments praising an author, as these have no relevance. So, for this Greek expert to have spent time actually searching through critical editions looking for a scribal note,
I couldn't even find it in some of my critical texts.
and for Inspiring Philosophy not to pick up on or point out the simplest of mistakes is awkward to say the least. Unfortunately for them, the rest of their response video only gets worse. On to the next blunder.
And the thing is, I don't think that there is a language where you can just universally take any compound word, separate it off. And I don't even think you can do that in German. You can't do it in English. You can't do it in most languages. You certainly can't do it in Greek. You can't do it in Latin either. Like that's not how compound words work.
Here we're told that our linguistic breakdown of Parakletos into its component parts is illegitimate, arguing that you cannot universally approach compound words in this way. They even highlight the Greek language specifically, claiming
you certainly can't do it in Greek.
Firstly, this is a straw man of our position. We never argued that you can do this universally with every single compound Greek word in existence. Our discussion has been around the meaning of the specific compound word, parakletos. Secondly, our approach is especially valid for the Greek language, because in reality, its compounds are routinely broken down into their component parts. As Professor of Philology Anna Davies explains, composition is one of the standard means by which Indo-European languages in general, and Greek in particular, enrich their vocabulary. It is a basic rule of thumb that new compounds yield new meanings, and that these are normally predictable from the meaning of the component elements. As you can see, our approach to understanding compound words is said to be a standard one for Indo-European languages in general and Greek in particular, which is the exact opposite of what Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert claimed. As they said,
you certainly can't do it in Greek.
Finally, it's worth pointing out that we have never argued that compound words should be understood based on etymology alone. When interpreting any text, one should start with the etymological meaning and then factor in the context before arriving at a final conclusion on the author's intended meaning. This is the exact approach that we have taken with interpreting parakletos, as we acknowledge from the beginning that the compound word has multiple possible meanings, and have used the context of John's Gospel, specifically in light of the paraclete problem, to rule out the common biblical interpretations of advocate, comforter, and helper. On to the next blunder.
The problem for our Muslim friend here is he cannot find a place where paraclete, parakletos, ever means the praised one or famed one. Is the Holy Spirit.
If one of y'all's responses to this video doesn't involve a Greek text, an actual Greek text, which says, which uses the term parakletos to mean praised one in particular, I don't care about you anymore. I'm not doing this anymore.
Here, Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert argue that our proposed meaning for parakletos can only be accepted if it's found in literature outside of the New Testament. This objection completely misses the point of what we've been arguing from the beginning. You should not expect to find this usage in extra biblical material because, as we've explained in past videos, John's usage of parakletos represents a new epithet or name. In other words, the translator, in his attempt to accurately capture the meaning of Ahmed when translating the original message of Jesus into Greek, coined a new compound, parakletos, with the intended meaning of praised in excess over. This is why it's silly for them to demand evidence of this exact usage outside of the New Testament, because we're arguing it was creatively used this way for the first time with the novel purpose of accurately conveying Ahmed in Greek. What should be expected, and can easily be demonstrated, is that our claim has biblical precedent, because there are other instances of newly coined words within the New Testament. For example, the Greek compound epiousios in the Lord's Prayer in Matthew and Luke. As Thayer's Greek lexicon confirms, this word was not in use in ordinary speech and seems to have been coined by the evangelists themselves. Just like parakletos, this word, epiousios, has puzzled interpreters. It is extremely unusual, essentially unattested outside the New Testament, so its meaning has long been debated. Amongst various interpretations, one interpretation proposed by modern scholars is to break the word into its component parts, interpreting the prefix epi as for and the adjective ousios as existence, and then understanding it as necessary for existence, as the BDAG lexicon confirms. This approach follows that of church fathers, such as Jerome and others, who also broke down epiousios into its two component parts, exploring the different meanings of the prefix epi and the adjective ousios. This is similar to our approach with understanding parakletos. Let's see if Inspiring Philosophy is willing to attack his own church fathers and modern Christian academics with the same energy. On to the next blunder.
I'm just simply saying this isn't even that strong of a quotation that a professor is offhandedly mentioning that the verbal form of the word is often translated as to praise or to be praised. And again, it's possible he was misspeaking. It's possible that he's just thinking, well, praise and celebrate are the same thing. It doesn't usually mean specifically to praise. It means to celebrate.
Here, the Greek expert goes on to dismiss my citation of Professor Gregory Nagy's statement that the verbal forms kleo, kleo, and kleome are usually translated as praise and be praised, characterizing it as a weak offhand remark, even speculating that Professor Gregory Nagy has misspoken. Unsurprisingly, their claims are, once again, flat out wrong. Professor Gregory Nagy did not misspeak. He was absolutely correct to state that the verbal forms are usually translated as praise and be praised. Let's begin with Robert Beeke's Etymological Dictionary of Greek, which defines kleo as to celebrate, praise, proclaim. Next up, we have the Pape German lexicon, which defines kleo as preisen, meaning praise. The Bailey Greek to French lexicon translates kleo as vanter, meaning to praise. I am now going to show a quick slideshow of numerous additional examples of English, German, and French scholars that all translate these verbal forms as praise or be praised. In summary, we have presented numerous independent Greek to English, Greek to German, and Greek to French lexicons, all converging on the same meaning of praise, clearly demonstrating that Professor Gregory Nagy made no mistake whatsoever, and I was correct to cite him as evidence in my favour. It's quite frankly outrageous that Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert would disrespect Professor Gregory Nagy to such an extent, going so far as to casually dismiss his expertise as misspeaking, all purely on the basis of disliking what he said. On to the next blunder.
Paraclete.
This Muslim is just making so many errors because he doesn't understand the Greek. That's why Will is here to correct him. Nowhere does kletos mean to praise or to call. It can mean famed or celebrated.
According to Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert, the word kletos only means celebrated or famed, but not praised, which is the core meaning of Ahmed and Muhammad. I'll start by making it clear. We've always acknowledged that famed is one of the acceptable meanings of kletos, along with praised. Let's now tackle their claim that kletos does not carry the meaning praised. This assertion is demonstrably false. Scholarly translations across the English, German, and French academic traditions clearly demonstrate that the word kletos precisely corresponds to the core meaning of Ahmed and Muhammad. Professor of Greek Thomas Seymour defines agakletos as highly praised. Similarly, Dr. Wilhelm Pape's German lexicon defines the compound perikletos as praised on all sides, using the German word gepriesen. It is striking to note that gepriesen is precisely the word used to translate the names Ahmed and Muhammad into German, which further demonstrates that we are dealing with a direct and precise linguistic connection. This can be seen in Professor Bertram Schmitz's translation of Ahmed as hoch gepriesen, meaning highly praised. This can also be seen in Professor Karl Heinz Ohlig's translation of Muhammad and Ahmed as der gepriesen, meaning the praised. This word, gepriesen, is in fact widespread within the German scholarly tradition when it comes to translating kletos. I'm now going to show a quick slideshow of numerous additional German examples of kletos being translated as gepriesen, i.e. praised. The connection between kletos and praise also extends to French lexicons, where we can see the Bailey lexicon defining kletos as digne d'être vanté, meaning worthy of being praised. In summary, in case you've lost count, we've shared a total of 11 different scholarly sources in multiple languages, all converging to define kletos as praised, which is the exact meaning of Muhammad. I've shown that Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert couldn't be more wrong when they dismissed praised as a translation for kletos.
So if you're ready, let's play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Here we go. Which of the following is not a valid meaning of kletos? Celebrated, famed, praised, or hammer? You know, it's kind of tense, isn't it, for a $100 question?
It really is.
So your final answer is?
Final answer is C.
My gosh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
On to the next blunder.
Even when you have words which have extremely similar spellings and even extremely similar meanings, they are often not the same word.
Here, Inspiring Philosophy's Greek expert himself states that words can be different despite having extremely similar spellings and meanings, citing kletos and klutos as an example in his presentation. As you're now going to see, this completely backfires against them and actually further supports our position. In the 9th century, a Christian Arab, Hubaysh ibn al-Hasan, translated the compound word aga klutos as Mahmud, as shown by the GGA lexicon. Viewers familiar with Arabic will know that Mahmud is Arabic for praised and shares the exact same root as Ahmad and Muhammad. So, this 9th century Christian Arab provides clear evidence that the word klutos, and by extension kletos, are directly translated into Arabic as Mahmud when part of a compound word. Similarly, we have already shown earlier that the word kletos is defined as endoxos in the lexicon of Cyrillus. This is also significant because Hunayn ibn Ishaq, another Christian Arab from the 9th century, explicitly translates the word endoxos as Mahmud. We'd like to thank Inspiring Philosophy and his team for putting Klutos on our radar and bringing to light even more linguistic connections to Muhammad, ironically via Christian Arabs themselves, no less. On to the next blunder.
Most of the differences are things you can't translate because they're spelling errors.
Exactly.
Spelling errors occur literally all the time in Greek manuscripts. When you're talking about specific manuscripts rather than a manuscript tradition, it doesn't matter what the spelling of a particular manuscript has,
because there are spelling errors in them.
Let's clarify the objection for our viewers. In our original presentation, we argued using manuscript evidence that the two forms, kletos and kletos, were regarded as interchangeable variant spellings during the time of John's Gospel. Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert have challenged the conclusion we draw from this evidence, offering an alternative explanation. According to their view, kletos and kletos were not considered to be interchangeable variants, but rather, because of their similarity in form and pronunciation, it was easy for scribes to commit accidental spelling mistakes, where instead of writing kletos, they would unintentionally write kletos. As we are now going to demonstrate, our conclusion that these are valid interchangeable variant spellings during the time of John's Gospel is fully in line with the orthographic conventions of the time. This is confirmed by LGPN Ling, an Oxford University scholarly project that has made major contributions to the understanding of ancient Greek names, undertaking the analysis of tens of thousands of names, drawn from a wide range of sources, including literary, lexicographical, epigraphic, and papyrological sources. The LGPN Ling online database confirms that the names Herakleitos and Herakleitos are both variant forms that were used interchangeably in the Roman imperial period, which is the period that the New Testament was authored, citing the example of a 1st century CE Egyptian papyrus that is contemporary with John's Gospel. As the LGPN Ling online database confirms, this interchangeability also applies to the region of Asia Minor during the Roman imperial period, which is particularly significant as Asia Minor is the very same region where John's Gospel is believed to have been written. The interchangeability of kletos and kletos is further confirmed by the British classical scholar Elizabeth Dawes, who uses the interchange of kletos and kletos as evidence that they were very close, if not identical in sound. We can therefore see that scholarly analysis of the use of kletos in the imperial period, including in 1st century CE papyri, demonstrates that kletos was an interchangeable variant spelling of kletos, rather than a mere scribal slip, as Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert claim. The interchangeability of kletos and kletos around the time of John's Gospel is further supported by the papyrological evidence. If we examine digitized papyri from the 1st century CE, we find that both Herakleitos and Herakleitos occur in comparable ratios, as we will now demonstrate using the online resource papyri.info, which is an aggregator of several major scholarly Greek databases. As you can see, searching for Herakleitos in the 1st century CE gives 6 results. By comparison, Herakleitos occurs 3 times in the 1st century CE. If we expand the sample size by 3 more centuries up until 400 CE, so that we approximately cover the entire Roman imperial period, the results still occur in comparable ratios. As you can see, Herakleitos appears 15 times. By comparison, Herakleitos occurs 9 times. Now let's expand the sample size even further by analysing the related name Heraclius, from which Herakleitos and Herakleitos ultimately originate. Once again, we see that the 2 forms of the name appear in comparable ratios in the 1st century CE, the Kleos spelling with eta occurring 127 times, while the Cleo spelling with epsilon iota occurring 48 times, despite the fact that the epsilon iota spelling is considered the classical spelling of the name. The fact that both spellings appear in comparable ratios in the 1st century CE, while also maintaining a similar ratio when the sample size is increased to cover the Roman imperial period, completely undermines inspiring philosophy and his Greek expert's claim that Kletos should be dismissed as a mere scribal error. The eta spelling clearly occurs far too commonly to be compared to scribal slips. Rather, it functions exactly like other variant name forms, much like Mark and Mark, or John and John, all of which are recognised as legitimate alternatives. A quick note for inspiring philosophy. In this section, we have been discussing the actual Roman imperial period, not the Ottoman period, as we know he's prone to confusing the two together.
Are you saying that the Ottomans were Rome?
They claim to be, yeah.
The Ottoman Empire is the Roman Empire?
You can laugh at it or make fun of it all you want. That's what they claim. They called themselves Kaisers e Rum. They called themselves Kaisers e Rum.
Roman Empire, ladies and gentlemen, man. They became Rome, right? Okay, Ottomans are Rome.
That's
okay,
what they claimed, yeah.
That's fine.
As a final point, this spelling mistake explanation by inspiring philosophy and his Greek expert is deeply ironic. In the past, Christian apologists often mocked Muslims for raising the possibility of scribal confusion in discussions of the Paraclete prophecy.
He's saying that what John supposedly originally wrote was perikleitos, whereas what you have in John is parakletos. Parakletos. Here is what he was claiming. See, he said that originally John wrote perikleitos. That's a lie. He's trying to tell you that the manuscripts you have today, which reads parakletos, that's a corruption. It was changed. Because originally, John wrote perikleitos, a lie from the pit of hell. Why is it a lie? Because number one, there's not a shred of manuscript, textual, historical, archaeological evidence, because we have manuscripts of John before Muhammad.
We can see in the past that Christian apologists once mocked the old scribal error-based approach used by the likes of Zakir Naik when discussing the Paraclete prophecy. Yet we now find these same critics themselves appealing to scribal confusion.
There are spelling errors in them.
In order to dismiss the new linguistically grounded evidence we have presented. The very same scribal confusion Muslim argument that was once mocked by Christian apologists as special pleading is now embraced by inspiring philosophy and his Greek expert as a last line of defense. This is not an answer to our argument. It's an admission that no better answer exists. On to the next blunder. The famous Escorial Codex Omega manuscript, one of the earliest surviving manuscripts of Homer's Iliad, contains an instance of the word telekleitoio, which is just an inflected form of telekleitos.
He's referring to a specific manuscript.
Yeah.
I don't doubt. I'll explain why this is fallacious. But like, you cannot refer to a specific manuscript of a given text for proof of how a word was spelled in ancient times.
Here, Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert dismiss my use of the Escorial Codex Omega manuscript as evidence for the interchangeability of telekleitos and telekleitos. They argue that it's only a single manuscript, and it therefore does not carry sufficient weight as evidence. First of all, they appear to be ignorant of the fact that this manuscript is monumental, as it is among the earliest surviving complete manuscripts of Homer's Iliad. It is so important that it's part of the small elite group of manuscripts digitized by the Homer Multitext Project for Scholarly Analysis. Second of all, the interchangeability of telekleitos and telekleitos is not unique to the Escorial Codex Omega manuscript, but is in fact widespread in the Homeric manuscript tradition. Let's compare Homer's Iliad, Book 9, line 233, across other important manuscripts. Venetus A uses the epsilon iota spelling. Venetus B uses the eta spelling. And Escorial Upsilon also uses the eta spelling. This clear interchangeability between telekleitos and telekleitos is by no means restricted to the Homeric tradition. We also find that the reading of telekleitos, as found in the Escorial Codex Omega manuscript, was explicitly quoted by the well-known Christian polemical work, Exhortation to the Greeks. In the earlier surviving manuscript of this text, the medieval Parisinus Grecus 450, which is regarded as the sole primary witness to the work, the word appears as telekleitoio, spelled with an eta, exactly the same as in the Escorial Codex Omega manuscript of Homer's Iliad that we discussed earlier. This convergence is significant for several reasons. The Escorial Codex Omega manuscript belongs to the Homeric manuscript tradition, whereas the Exhortation to the Greeks is a completely independent Christian polemical text, transmitted outside the Iliad manuscript family and preserved for an entirely different purpose. Taken together, this evidence points away from the notion that the eta spelling is only supported by a lone manuscript, and therefore is an accidental error, as Inspiring Philosophy and his Greek expert argue. Instead, the convergence of the Escorial Codex Omega manuscript and Parisinus Grecus 450 supports our conclusion that the spelling telekleitos with eta, carrying the sense far praised, reflects an early and broadly recognized form of the word. With Inspiring Philosophy's laundry list of blunders out of the way, I'd now like to briefly touch upon an amazing discovery that ties together everything we've argued throughout this video. There is an ancient gospel tradition known as the Old Syriac, preserved through manuscripts such as the Syriac Sinaiticus and Curetonian. In this tradition, we find that the standard translation of another paraclete, as found in modern renderings of John chapter 14, verse 16, is instead preserved as another, the paraclete. This is significant because it shows that there are not multiple paracletes, as implied by modern translations of John 14:16, but in fact only one paraclete from the perspective of John's Gospel, a unique individual prophesied to come after Jesus, which supports our argument that it is the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. Another important feature of the Old Syriac is that the word paraclete is left untranslated as parakleta, which supports our argument that this term was originally intended to be an epithet or name, and not the function advocate, comforter, or helper, as is often interpreted in modern Bible translations. Another important feature of the Old Syriac is that it omits the word holy in John 14:26. Instead preserving it as that Spirit, the Paraclete, which supports our argument that the Paraclete is a human figure and not the Holy Spirit. In our original video, we provided examples of the term Spirit being used in the New Testament to refer to human prophets. Regarding the dating of the Old Syriac, many scholars believe it preserves a text that goes back to at least the 2nd or early 3rd century. As the New Testament scholar Bruce Metzger confirms, though these manuscripts were copied in about the 5th and 4th centuries respectively, the form of text that they preserve dates from the close of the 2nd or beginning of the 3rd century. There are some scholars who believe the Old Syriac tradition is even more ancient. For example, Professor Adalbert Merx, a German theologian, regarded it as the oldest known text of the canonical Gospels. The theologian and prominent church historian Adolf Harnack stated, "As the text is almost completely preserved, the Syriac Sinaiticus is one of the most important witnesses. Nay, it is extremely probable that it is the most important witness for our Gospels." This is monumental, as it means our understanding of the Paraclete prophecy is not some fanciful or modern revisionist theory, but rather has its roots in some of, if not the earliest, known traditions of Jesus. In conclusion, I'd like to share one final thought. This is not an appeal to inspiring philosophy or his cohorts, as I don't believe they're sincere.
A given text for proof.
I am reaching out to those of his followers who might be watching. In this video, we've established beyond doubt that Parakletos is a completely valid translation of the name Ahmed into Greek. This is no longer open to dispute. All that's left now for Christian apologists is to appeal to coincidence. I'd like to ask you, the sincere viewer, out of the more than 100,000 words that exist in the New Testament, what are the odds that there is exactly one word that corresponds precisely to Ahmed, Parakletos, and that it just so happens to be found in the context of a prophecy where Jesus foretold of a momentous figure who would come after him? Are you really willing to stake your soul on this all being just a giant coincidence? May God guide those who are sincere and brave enough to act upon the truth once it is made manifest.
وإذ قال عيسى بن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه